Welcome to another Liquid Bullet production. With us today is movie stuntman and martial artist, Mr. Mark Johnson.
Nice to see you, mate.
Thanks for coming, Mark.
Thanks for coming. You're good?
Yeah, very good.
Awesome.
I'm not going to read out your list of films you've been in because it's longer than my arm, but if anyone wants to see it, go to IMDb and check out Mark Johnson. He's been in so many movies, there's too many to mention.
Yeah, it's been a few.
Yeah, so can we just start at the beginning, Mark? Go back to sort of where you grew up and where you was born.
Yeah, I was born in Glasgow. Lived there till I was 12 years old. And even come from quite a sort of poor background, really. Always wanted to be a stuntman right from that age.
Really? So when you was a kid, you just wanted to be a stuntman?
My mum and dad couldn't afford a bike for me, but my sister had a bike that we could share. So I borrowed my sister's bike and I'd go and jump over my mates on it and stuff like that. I mean, watching stuff like Evel Knievel and...
Was it pink one with little tassels on it?
It wasn't, it was silver, luckily. But yeah, it was... and even though it never had a crossbar, it was still too big for me, so when I jumped and got it wrong, I still hit a lower crossbar, and it was... yeah. So
was it like watching Evel Knievel that made you want to get into stunt work?
That was probably the first thing, yeah. Sort of seeing Evel Knievel and just thinking he was amazing, and started jumping bikes and doing silly things and getting into skateboards and things like that. So yeah, I mean, that sort of started it, and then moved down to England, and then the passion never left me. I just always getting into sort of skateboards, doing stunts and jumping stuff, and then it was a case of, right, well, where do we go from here? What inspired it next? It was I then sort of started watching Fall Guy and Hooper and even Smoking the Bandit and all those things. Hal Needham stuff, just man's a legend. You mean seeing all the stunts in that? I thought that's what I want to be. Got to be a stuntman right from an early age.
Did you ever tell anyone at that age you wanted to be a stuntman?
Yeah.
And what sort of reaction did you get?
Yeah, I just thought it was just a kid. He'll grow up. He'll do something different.
Yeah. So what sort of how was your schooling, going through school and?
I mean, it was pretty rough. I mean, it was starting sort of. It was fairly rough in Glasgow. Come down here because I started secondary school a year later than everyone else. And I was one of two Scottish kids in school. It was a pretty rough time, to be honest. So there was lots of fights going on, and not me starting them, but just people. There wasn't a week went by where I didn't have to fight my way home, really.
Really?
So it was pretty rough. So that's what got my fight side going with that. So I thought I'd better start a martial art and maybe sort of calm me down and learn different ways of doing things. So that's what started my martial journey. So yeah, it was one of those things that I was at school, carried on the martial arts side, but went to, as in your third or fourth year, can't remember when it is, whatever it is now, it's changed now, isn't it? So
yeah.
It changes all the time, but back then it was third or fourth year in secondary school. Went to the careers advisor and he says, what do you want to be when you leave school? And I said, I want to be a stuntman. He said, no, what do you really want to be when you leave school? I said, I want to be a stuntman. He said, well, you can't. He said, you've got to go and live in London and you need to do all these things up to Olympic level. He said, and you just can't do it. He said, so I'll put you down in the car trade. And I was like, and I thought, right, well, I thought about it logically. I mean, back then there wasn't the internet, you couldn't Google stuff. So I took his word for it, and I thought, well, there's no way I can move to London. I can't leave my mum on her own. I mean, I had to support her a bit, and I thought, right, well, car trade it is then. So headed into the car trade initially, became a panel beater. Did very well at that. Whatever I do, I try and do my best.
Yeah.
Always wanted to do a different style of martial art. I did karate and I did a bit of jiu-jitsu and a bit of boxing when I was younger. But always wanted to try a different art, and I found the one I was looking for about 30 years ago now. So I found the art I was after. Still couldn't find the stunts.
What art was that you was after?
It's people call it ninjutsu, but it's Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu. So it's a mixture of samurai and ninja stuff. It's a mixture of ancient and modern and functional and sort of historical, really. So yeah. It's got the full spectrum, really, which is what I wanted. I didn't want to run out of techniques. I wanted to learn for life.
Yeah.
And have something that would suit me for life, which worked out pretty well because it saved my life quite a few times. Because once I started going in, running doors, working in close protection, even if it wasn't for my art, I wouldn't be here today. So,
Yeah. What age did you start going into that sort of work, security work? And
well, I started my very first door job I did when I was 19, and I didn't like it because I went into a job and it was just, it was uncontrollable. Is probably the best word. Where, if somebody's having a ruckus, they're having a ruckus. But when you're seeing guys that were just a little bit squiffy getting chucked down a giant staircase, it was like this super long staircase. Ethically for me, it just didn't feel like a place I wanted to be.
yeah, that's like pre-SIA.
Yeah, that was way back. Yeah, it was way back. And then I got back into it again just before the SIA because I found a good crew. We went in and we wanted to do things a bit more ethically, really, than some of the ones that were doing it before. I mean, like I say, you got to be able to flip a switch in big situations, but when you see innocent people getting dragged into stuff that they shouldn't be,
It's like bullied, really, isn't it? So,
yeah. So I again, when I started doing the doors, I was in the car trade, running doors in the evenings and doing everything the best I could, wanting to do everything the best.
quite a full active life. Then.
Yeah.
2 jobs and
That's it.
the training.
Yeah, definitely. And then through my sort of background in the car trade, fixing metals and fiberglasses and things like that, I ended up. We got into the costume and prop business. Real sort of diversion I never would have seen.
What, like sort of film set costumes? and sets?
Collector stuff really, because it was one of those things that after a family bereavement, we all sort of had a chat. That Christmas we had a fancy dress party just to sort of lighten everyone's mood, and we knew the woman that owned the company, and she said, "Oh, do you know anyone else by a fancy dress company?" So we were like, "Oh, actually, that could be quite a good thing to keep the mother-in-law, keep the spark going, because after losing her husband, it was it's quite easy to sort of go inside yourself, really." So it really was good for her. So we sort of did it, and we helped her along, and Cindy would make costumes. And then I was looking at these fiberglass helmets and stuff they were buying in that was supposed to be collector's quality, and I was thinking I could do better than that myself. So I started going down the prop route, making stuff for them, and that just ballooned, and that's what sort of I then sort of moved into minor bits and bobs with films. That's when I started my film journey. I'd sort of bumped into a few people and started doing a few bits, and I thought, there is a way to get into this, And at that time, you could Google stuff, and I started looking into it. And then it was just out of the blue. We went and done a convention selling props. Bumped into a guy and got friendly with him, and started going down the route of training for the stunt register. So spent 20 odd grand, and I was seeing my wife one night a week, really.
Is that how much it costs? 20 grand?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of stuff to do. I mean, I was scuba diving. I was working the doors at the weekends, leaving a shift at 3 o'clock in the morning to go and queue at Stony Cove to scuba dive all the next day. And then you'd be horse riding 2 or 3 times a week. You'd be fencing twice a week. I'd be teaching my martial arts 2 times a week. And then
no life to yourself, no time to
that. But it was one of them things that I'd chosen that route, and I thought, right, I've finally found a way. I took a bit of a long path around it. I must admit, it happened later in life purely because that was when I could get the information. That's when everything fell into place. I then sustained an injury. Just right when I'd done my last, I was sort of 3/4 way through my last qualification, and phoned up Equity to say, look, can I freeze my qualifications? And they said, no, you can't. We've refused the right to do that now, so you're just going to have to wing it, and if we take skills away, we take skills away. When you apply for your next list, then so be it.
Oh, what, so you can actually, they were going to lose the qualification you've done?
Yeah, because it happened to me a couple of times where when I first started, I was into skydiving, and they took that away just before I started training. I was like, I already had that skill. So I then started 6 new skills, and then they took fencing away. So because that was the really weird thing, you couldn't do anything in less than a 12-month period. You had to do it over a prolonged period, but then they could change the rules. They could change the goalposts every year.
Right.
So you could be doing it. You could think, I'm nearly there. Then the next year it'll take 2 of your skills away. You go.
So you've wasted all that time,
Wasted all the time, effort, money. which was frustrating, but I got through that a couple of times when they did that. Sustained the injury and they wouldn't freeze the qualifications. So I said, okay, well, I'll see what happens when I come back from the injury. I didn't want to tell them what the injury was because it was fairly serious, and I didn't want them to think, oh, he's never going to work.
Sort of write you off, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to be written off because I knew I was going to come back from it. So I sort of carried on. Then it was one of those things that I said, right, can I have my new list for this year? Got chatting with a guy at Equity, and he said, not being funny, mate. He said, you were at 38 when you stopped. You're now 39. You've got to restart, possibly with a couple of less skills. He said, they're not going to accept you after 40. He said, they just don't.
How comes? I didn't think that you was allowed to discriminate against age. Or
when I looked into it, there was a guy at the time that was suing them, and he won. And I think he's doing okay. But you mean it was one of them things at the time. The guys that I was already mixing with and working with within the register were saying, you mean you could go down that route, you could sue them. It is proven to be against the law, and they are going to do something about it. But you mean at the moment, if you sue them, you mean as far as we're concerned, we've been told that the guy that sued them is never going to work. So he'll win, but he'll lose in the end.
So they just won't give him the work to carry on going forward.
Yeah, so I think that happened for a little while, but I think he got through it. And he's doing very well. Like I say, all this was stuff I was being told. I don't know the guy, and I don't know how far he went down the line, and it's just one of them things. So I just sort of got chatting with another guy at Equity, and I thought, well, I'm not going to let my dream go away. I've wanted to do this since a kid. I know I've come to it late, but I was actually teaching stuntmen stuff that they were going, holy crap, you mean you're made for this, you need to get into this. Yeah. So I thought, right, I'm not going to let anyone tell me I can't. I've actually had to teach them techniques and stuff that was basic to me, and they're going, God, this is amazing. You need to get into film. You need to do the stunts. So I thought, right, well, actually, if they think I'm good enough for it, and I know I'm good enough for it, there's no way I'm going to let it go away. So I thought, right, I'm going to find the legal way to become independent. So I did a lot of digging and hit a lot of brick walls and found out, all the ins and outs of how to do it. So started doing it, and yeah, it's very, very difficult when you're an independent outside the register, especially at that time. There was very few people outside the register that were doing anything stunt-wise. So it was hard, but it started to grow, and then became friendly with a local director. We were doing lots of adverts for Sony and things like that, and movies for men, and real sort of like mini little action movies, and really getting into it. And that was the point at which he was making his own movies as well as working with Sony. So we sort of thought, actually, this is really good. We're building something beautiful here. So it was actually when he said to us, how many guys have you got? Can you put a few guys together? So I looked at the guys in our martial arts groups and guys that I'd trained with, that I became friends with. We thought, right, we could build a little independent team here. So that was the start of the team, really, because initially it was just me. So it was really nice to sort of think, actually, we are doing something a bit different. So, in my eyes, I wanted to train in a different way as well, because I totally understand the frustration of stunt register guys don't like independence, because there's a lot of independents out there that are absolutely shocking. They've got no background, they've got no provenance, they haven't done a rigorous set of skills to prove that they've got a background in what it takes.
Something, yeah.
There's too many that go, oh yeah, I've done 3 months of this, or I've done 2 courses of that, and then all of a sudden put themselves out there as stunt coordinators.
Can I just ask you, Mark, what sort of skills do you need to become a stuntman? What would go into that sort of thing?
For us, this is why I wanted to do it a completely different way. I wanted to start very similarly to the martial arts. If you do something, like let's say you do your 6 skills and then you never do them again, you're going to get skill fade over time. And let's say you wanted to play a piano or paint beautiful paintings. If you do it once a year, you're going to be crap.
Yeah.
So we sort of went at it in more of a sort of a view of thinking, right, actually, if you keep your skills sharp, a certain base of skills that you use all the time, then you know where you are at all times. You know where your team is, you know where you can put them, you know what they're going to be good at. So we thought, actually, let's start it off similar to a martial art. You have to train on a regular basis and maintain that training. We start off with breakfalls and rolls and things like that that's going to save you, because at the end of the day, 90% of the bread and butter jobs is about falling. You get shot, you fall over.
Yeah.
You get hit, you fall over. You get hit by a car, you're doing a breakfall on the ground. You get smashed against the wall, it's a breakfall. You know what I mean? When you're on fire and you hit the deck to get put out, it's a breakfall. High fall onto an airbag, it's a breakfall. So we thought it's common sense. So we thought, right, really hammer in the breakfalls, and then do them at different levels, do them on different substrates, do them with and without pads, know that your body is safe from all the impacts. Then we concentrate on screen combat. We sort of differentiate between sort of stage and screen combat. We don't do a lot of stage, we aim mainly for screen, and with screen, you've got to tailor-make your angles to wherever the camera is. Right. You can't say to a DOP, yeah, well, you got to film it from there because this is what the punch looks like. If he wants to film something that's in the background that he likes, then we have to fit the fight to whatever his view is.
Because just ask you this, so in the films, like, they're not actually hitting each other, are they?
No, I mean, there are times where you do consent to hitting with other stunt guys, because there are, but it has to be consented and it has to be practiced, and it has to be, it's generally on padded areas and things like that. But if you can get away with 99% of the things with no hits, it means you're not going to have a continuity problem because you haven't just lumped your mate and he's got a swollen cheek.
Yeah,
You haven't got a problem where you've just injured your mate and he can't work for the rest of the day and you've got to replace him with someone who looks completely different. So you can do it 20 or 30 takes and you're both okay. So
how is that actually done to make that look so real?
It's all about the angles, really. You got to understand. It's selling an illusion. It's about the performance of the person doing the hitting. That's got to look convincing. The performance of the person doing the reaction. That's got to look convincing. The timing, so they both match together.
Yeah.
Then the angle, so that you get it right with the camera. So it really is a case of, it's fine tuning everything, and if you can practice it well, it just happens. You just go, all right, camera's there, this is where we need to hit. So it's one of those things that you think of a camera sort of pointing like a laser line through your target. And if you were going to hit me, you have to cross that laser line to actually hit me in the jaw. So if you hit me at the jaw, here, you're going to see air from that camera.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas if you cross that laser line between my chin and you go across here, so if you punch across there now, and I start to sell it, we're starting to put the thing together.
Right.
So as soon as you understand that, it's the same principle for a punch, a kick, a baseball bat. All those things, you slashes with swords, you're replicating a motion going through the body. So as soon as that motion is either a hard hit or a slice, you can tailor it to exactly what you need.
Do you ever find, has there ever been many accidents where actors or people on set actually do connect or get hit?
Yeah, they do. It does happen. And generally, it's one of those things that it shouldn't happen very often, and it doesn't happen very often. It happens on the odd occasion, and it's generally, it could be anything from a little bit of a lack of rehearsals, you're thrown in at the deep end, or you've practiced at one speed, you've not practiced at fighting speed, and you all of a sudden the red mist descends, you step quarter of an inch closer, they step quarter of an inch closer, and all of a sudden you're getting sort of little knocks.
So in your job, there's always a risk of injuries, really.
Yeah, there's always a risk of it. Yeah. You try your best, and 99.9% of the time, it's bang on. But it's only going to take, someone who's, if you're fighting with an actor and the actor's not had a lot of training, and they step just a tiny little bit closer, it's just either one or the other's going to get a little bit of a tap. But because we are pulling it and we are sort of aware of distance, it generally isn't anything very serious. Yeah.
What other sort of stunts go on behind the scenes that people don't really realise when they're watching a movie? Because obviously a lot of people are just under the impression that the actor is doing all that stuff themselves.
Yeah.
That's not right, is it?
Yeah, I mean, some actors will do some bits themselves. Tom Cruise, a classic example. He does so much, does everything himself. He's absolutely incredible. But that carries a burden in itself, because the guy's super talented, does all his stunts, but you've only got to look at when he broke his ankle. The whole production has to stand still. Whereas, if a stunt guy or someone who's less important, say less important, that's a terrible way of putting it because it's not less important, less crucial to the filming schedule. If they get a twisted ankle or a broken ankle, it's not held up the rest of the production.
Yeah.
So that's a key thing where insurance companies are more and more having a look at, can this actor, what's their ability? When you risk assess it, have they got the ability? Have they got the training behind it? And are they going to go through ongoing training while they're rehearsing? And so they have to tailor it for everything.
Yeah, now you've said that, it makes sense. So rather than have an actor out of action for months for an injury, they just put someone else in who looks like him to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't want anyone getting injured, but if anyone has an injury, it's less crucial to filming if it is someone that's face isn't going to be on camera every single day. Do you know?
Because that can cost probably hundreds of thousands of pounds for.
You think if they've got to stand down a whole production for 6 weeks and they've got to pay them because if they end up going on to another job, they can't go back onto that job, and so they've got to put them on hold. So potentially they're paying a lot of people.
What sort of other stunts go on in the industry?
I mean, it's limitless. I mean, it's as limitless as your imagination. But it sort of falls under basic sort of outlines. I mean, a lot of it's fights, falls. Then you look at wire work and things like that. Which
when you say wire work, is this like when you see like the superheroes flying through the sky?
Yeah, if they're flying or if they're slamming someone against the wall or chucking them up in the air or floating around. Sort of vampires floating up and standing on the ceiling, all that sort of thing. It's all wire assisted. Can
you explain a little bit how what wire work is and what that does?
Well, it's anything from increasing an impact. So if someone's been in an explosion or they've been punched by a superhero or something, you've got to exaggerate that energy, and the only way to do that is to stick them in a jerk vest, put them in a wire, and it could be a manual wire assist where it's basically a couple of guys on the end of the rope doing all the inputting all the energy. Could be nitrogen air rams and ratchets, all these different principles that are going to throw the body into that massive energy sort of assisted motion that shows you that that's just not a normal punch or it's not a normal thing to happen to the body. So it's just a safer way of getting people to fly through the air and land it.
Yeah, because like when you see it on the telly, obviously there's no wires there, so no one really knows how that happens, do they?
Yeah,
it's quite clever.
It is very clever. It's once you see some of the behind the scenes stuff, it's just phenomenal. I mean, that's sometimes more interesting than the films themselves. I mean, I love the films, don't get me wrong, but you watch them and then you go, I can't wait to see the behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good insight for everyone today to hear what goes on behind the film sets and learn a little bit more, really.
Yeah.
So what other stunts have you been involved in your time?
Well, we sort of do, we put it into categories, so we have fights and falls, so that's anything from a normal fight to something on wires where somebody's spinning through the air, kicking or whatever. And then with the falls, it's anything from falling on the ground to a high fall off a building or anything really that's based on falls. Then we do the wire, like I said, with all the wire assist stuff. Then we do fire, so anything from little burns, sort of a hand to an arm to a full body.
So you actually get in flames, your whole body's in flames?
Yeah, completely, yeah. And again, it's all learning about the chemistry, learning about the principles, learning it's as important training. That's the other good thing about the team. We've got guys that say to us, right, I want to get into stunts, but I don't want to do fire. I'm not. It's just not my thing. So it doesn't mean that they don't do fire training, because then we go, right, okay, well you have to become part of the fire safety part of our team. So we'll teach them what happens when someone's on fire, how to kit them up, how to help them out, how to get them ready. The principles of keeping chemicals and accelerants and ignition sources all separate, all that side of things, so that it runs as smooth as clockwork. And that way you know that there's never going to be any accidental ignitions. When that person's on fire, they dictate when they want to be put out. So when they go down to get put out, then we teach them how to put them out safely, how to stop reignitions. And then, all of a sudden, the guys that don't want to do fire are a very valid part of the safety
involved
team.
in it, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I probably spoil the fun for people but can I just ask, so what is the fire? How do you make the fire? Or
There's various ways of doing it, to be honest. And it's one of those things that to get the chemicals that are involved, you have to be trained. So a lot of the places that you go to buy it, they'll want provenance. They'll want to know, have you done it? If not, they'll put you on a training course to use their chemicals. So it's literally a case of you have to have, if you think of a race driver with his layers of Nomex, we use Nomex or Carbonex.
like sort of something under safety under clothing.
Fireproof underwear,
right.
like racers wear. But we'll have various gels that we can use that we actually will improve the functionality and let you burn longer, because you've not just got one layer of underwear and a race suit. You've got to have costume and things like that on top. And so it's setting the person up so that they've got layers of the gel coated underwear, so it keeps you cool and it's fire retardant in itself. So you've got a fire retardant material soaked into a fireproof material.
Right.
So you're doubling up, and then you get layers of that, and then you put your dry layers of Nomex or Carbonex, then you put your costume layer on, then there's various accelerants. I mean, there's some amazing naked burn gels that you just basically put gels on your hands, two stages of gel, and away you go. And it's come on so much. The science behind it is just incredible.
How long can you sort of like be on fire for? Because being on fire for 2 seconds for me sounds horrific.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, one of the latest fire gels that's come out it's absolutely incredible. It's a naked burn gel, and it's from a European company, phenomenal company, and you basically paste on your barrier gel, you squirt on your accelerant, and they've got videos of, they basically hold their arm there, 2 or 3 minutes, and the only reason it stops is because it runs out of accelerant. It doesn't.
Oh, really?
And then they peel off the residue, they put some more on, and they reburn it on the same base.
So do you actually feel the heat coming through, or?
On that one, it's very, very minimal. On some, you use with body burns that are on costume and stuff, and you have your layers of gel. Then you put layers of gel. You'll dip your hands and your head and any exposed areas in gel. If you're not wearing a mask or a set of silicone gloves, you can use silicons to protect you. But if it's an open face and open hand one, you would gel up any exposed areas once you're all ready to burn, and that would protect those. But I mean, you do feel heat. That's when you hit the deck, and it's one of those things that as soon as you start to feel heat, you've got to know that don't wait till it's too hot, because the heat will carry on. It's a bit like when you're cooking a roast, the heat carries on for a little bit.
Yeah, once you take it off.
Yeah, so if you're really hot, then by the time you hit the deck and get put out, you could be getting a little bit blistered. So that's not what you want. So we always say to people, build things gradually and understand the gel you're using, because all the gels are different. So you've got to do trials and work your way up so that you understand how long you can burn.
How scary is that, putting all your trust into someone else to put you out? Because obviously you're relying on them, aren't you, to take their part? So
I mean, I wouldn't say it's scary. You have a level of anticipation, because your endorphins and your adrenaline is firing through the roof. Because we love what we do, and you're on fire at the end of the day. So your brain's sort of going, do you know you're on fire?
Yeah, it's not natural.
It's not. So you're fighting sort of these primal urges to perform while you're on fire. So it really, I mean, you don't really feel fear because you trust. We drill it so much. I mean, if it was a new team and I didn't know the people that were putting me out, there would be an element of fear there because I don't know if I haven't worked with them. I mean, generally, if I haven't worked with them, I wouldn't
So
go
you'd always work within the same team,
Yeah,
you wouldn't
yeah.
work with strangers or anything?
No, unless we trained it prior. That's the way to do it. If you get a new team, you go, right, we're going to do this. You'd have rehearsal days and go, right, this is what we're going to do. You'd have dry runs without the flames and getting all the timings and principles and all the signals put in place. And then straight away you go, right, okay, I'm happy to do a burn. So you do a small one and you just try everything out. And then you go, right, okay, this is going well. This is a good team, good safety team. We're good to go. So I mean, the way we run, because we run a team the way we do, whenever we have a burn, we know it's our team members around us. So it's like clockwork. You have the people coming in with extinguishers. You have to extinguish a certain way. Taken from head to the foot. You got to think in terms of if you're firing a load of CO2 around someone, you don't want them breathing it in. So they've got to hold their breath during that time. And then you got to pull in a fire blanket so that you can make sure there's no reignitions because there could be unburnt fuel on them. So there's all these other little minor risks that you've got to deal with all the way along to make sure they don't happen. Yeah. So it's quite exciting, really. That's probably the best word for it.
Yeah. Can I just ask you as well? Obviously, Roy can put the clip up. We've got a bit of footage of you actually crashing a car on its side.
Oh yeah.
How does that happen? How do you work your way through that?
Yeah, I mean that came from years of doing road testing in cars and dealing with crashed cars, knowing about crashed cars, and then getting into motorsports and things like that, and actually crashing cars. And you get that feel for what your body's capable of and how strong cars actually are. Even if they're hitting the right place, or if you want to weaken them and hit them to get a different effect, it gives you an extra insight, really. So it's really just the principles of. Again, we split that into sort of areas of we'll have precision drivers, so we'll have guys that they can drive close to cameras or close to areas and not hit them while the stunts are going on. Then we'll have trick drivers, guys that can do donuts and handbrake turns and things like that. And then when it comes to the stunt side, we're looking at impacts and jumps and things like that. So we work our way through to get to the jump area, and during that time, generally you have a few little knocks. So when it comes to jumps, it's really build the ramp. Get the ramp built to your specifications. Understand whether you want it to go over, whether you want it to slide, what you want the outcome of that stunt to be. Once you know that, it's about knowing, right, okay, what preparation does a car need? Because you get people that think you can just do it in a car. I'll bring this car and this is the one we're going to do it in. And you get Productionz that, because they don't know about some of the things to prepare a car, they have to rely on us. They have to go, right, well, what do we need to do? So from our perspective, we go, right, okay, well, once we know we've got the area, we've got the ramps we need, we've got the safety team we need, the car needs to be prepped to a certain level so that it's strong enough to do the stunt, the seat is strong enough to protect the person, everything in there that's flammable is taken out. It's just things like taking the fuel tank out, putting a swirl pot in, so that if you go upside down, there's not fuel spent everywhere while the car's sparking down the road.
How does that work, like with a car stunt? Do you have to get that shot done in one take? Because once you've rolled it, it's obviously damaged the car. So.
Yeah. It's on big productions, you'll get 2 or 3 cars.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they'll have multiple vehicles prepped and ready. On a lot of stuff, because independent stuff, we tend not to work on some of the huge budgets, but we still get all those great stunts. But they'll go, right, can we do it in one shot? So we have to train even harder in a way, because we haven't got
a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah, it does.
So you've got to get that right.
You've got to get it right. So it's good in a way, because sometimes if you've got 3 cars, you go, oh well, if I mess it up, I'll get another go. So yeah, it's fun, but people think because you sort of get out of it and you're all right, and they think, oh yeah, bloody hell, it's easy.
Yeah.
You're in a 2-ton tumble dryer at the end of the day. You're bouncing down the road, and you do feel great because the endorphins and adrenaline. But afterwards, you have got to take a little bit of time for yourself, because you have been knocked about a fair bit, and it's just ensuring that that you're still safe, you're still all good, because you might have tweaked something you don't know about. You might have injured something, and you might not know till later that day. So generally, it's just about listening to your body, taking some time. Don't get doing a car stunt and then thinking like you've been bounced down the road a couple of times, and then think you're going to go straight into another one. Just take a little bit of time and just get your head back in the zone.
Can I just ask you about, you said about your martial arts?
Yeah.
So did you do that to help with the stunts, or was that something separate?
I did that purely for my own benefit, and it just sort of, and because it's got such a wide variety of weapons and techniques and stuff that just hadn't been seen, I was showing guys that are in the industry at the time, and because it was stuff that was just completely new, they were sort of going, this is just, I've never seen anything like it. So it worked to my benefit, because it made people stand up and go, well, you mean it's not just a standard martial art, it's not just basic normal stuff that they've normally seen. Because that was the other thing, you got guys that, and again, it's no disrespect, that's what the criteria was. They had to get to brown belt in a martial art to get one of their skills for the register, and a lot of them would leave it at that. They'd do that and not bother with it again. So,
gotcha, yeah.
And
so never progressing, they're just getting to the standard they need to get
and crack on. Because, I mean, ultimately, your goal when you get to that stage is to work. Now, if you've done it well and you're working a lot, then I mean it's hard to find time for training. A lot of guys do; they train meticulously, but I mean, I know a lot that don't.
Yeah.
And I don't mean getting in the gym and training. I mean train at your craft, train at the things that are important to your everyday. I mean, working in the stunt industry. So
what sort of where have you gone with your martial art career? What sort of path has that taken you down?
I mean, I've been doing it 30 years. I'm now the highest grade that the system offers. Not that grades are important. Grades are a piece of paper. They're just a gauge. They're a good thing for, I mean, when you're advertising your club and you go, oh, with this grade or that grade.
Goal,
so,
yeah.
I mean, I hold no importance in martial arts grades, because you look at the world of martial arts, there's some phenomenal people, but there's a lot of McDojos.
Yeah.
And that's the real thing. And the people that are cheated by that are the members of the public that go in and don't know any different, because they've never experienced it before.
What grade are you there, Mark? You said you.
It's called a Dai Shihan, which is in our art, you get to 10th dan, and again, this is the reason one of the reasons that we don't sort of shout about the grades. 10th dan has 5 levels, because there's it's been split up because there's guys that have been the 10th dan for longer than others. So they said it's like being in the shallow end of 10th dan or the deep end of 10th dan.
Yep.
So I'm now in the deep end of 10th dan. So, but then you get another award at the end of that, where it's called Dai Shihan. It means very important master teacher, sort of. That's probably a little bit over the top, but yeah.
Where has your training sort of taken you? As you've sort of travelled around with it?
Yeah, I mean, I go to Japan fairly regularly.
Go to Japan and train out there.
Yeah. It's phenomenal. You get to train with the Grandmaster. You get to train with all these top guys over there that've been training since the 60s and 70s, and I mean, these guys are anything from sort of mid-50s up to, 90, the Grandmaster. And
how do they treat you over there? Do they accept you over there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're welcomed in. They're very, very old-fashioned, welcoming. And it's just an experience. It's like, well, words can't even touch it. You go in there and you go into each of their dojos, and it's just wonderful. The feeling's great, but there's nothing better than when you see one of these older gentlemen, older than yourself, and they're chucking around 2 or 3 guys like there's nothing. You know what I mean? It's like they're like pieces of paper and just hitting the deck like sacks of spuds.
Did you find is it different over there to what it is here?
Yeah,
training.
Yeah, it is. Over there, you're getting it at its source. You're getting the guys that have done it in Japan for huge amounts of time, and our art does suffer, like a lot of arts, where there's some amazing teachers out there, but there's a lot of fakes. I mean, especially when the ninja boom happened in the 80s, and everyone wanted to be a ninja. And you had people just sticking on black gi and saying, yeah,
trying
I'm
to make money out of it, trying to
cash
people
in.
off.
And since then, there's still people doing the same. There's people that buy their grades, and same as everything. Same in the stunt industry. As people that buy their grades. There's people that, and if you can live with that ethically, then you crack on. But in my eyes, it's.
Have you ever had to use your martial arts in real life situations?
Yeah. I mean, running the doors. I mean, we were. At one point, it was a very problematic time. I mean, in Banbury, we were in the news of the world at one point as the most violent town in England.
Really?
and it was crazy. I mean, you go into the marketplace before there was cameras up, and it was like a war. It was literally like a mass war in the marketplace on a Friday night. So when we sort of started going in and running doors, I mean, we had threats from door companies, big sort of gangland door companies sending bullets with our names on to the clubs that we worked at, and driving by and shooting guns out the window of cars and stuff like that. We had people coming at us with knives, people pulling guns on us. We had, and that was back in the days. We could say we were even attacked with the old glass ashtrays and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
Back then as well.
Days, yeah.
So yeah, chairs, you name it, and some of the sizes of incidents were, it's pretty big. So it's completely my art that's kept me alive, without a doubt.